Welcome back. It's Friday, November 21st, and we have Tropical Cyclone Fina that is continuing to approach closer and closer to the Darwin region. The system's currently just positioned north of the Tiwi and Croker Islands before a southwesterly recurve will commence later today and push the system very close to Darwin by tomorrow into the afternoon and evening hours. As a result, potential impacts to the Darwin region are possible, and we now have Darwin under a cyclone warning. In today's forecast, we're going to cover off on everything that you need to know ahead of Tropical Cyclone Fina approaching very close to the Darwin region. Starting off by looking at the latest infrared satellite imagery from this morning and afternoon, we can see that here that there is a significant difference from what we saw yesterday, and actually by extent the last couple of days as well. We can see here compared to yesterday what we looked at was a very ragged, disorganized mess, and that actually extended to the past couple of days that we've seen this on the infrared imagery. But now we can see that this is much more defined and organized than what we had previously seen. We can see here, especially through the morning hours, that there was a huge surge of ongoing convection in these really deep pinks, whites, and greys as these cloud tops really exploded upwards in the atmosphere, pushing really high. And in fact, the tropoport's high in this region is around 17 kilometers. So some of these cloud heights were easily reaching 55,000 to 60,000 feet, or above that 17 kilometer threshold. And as a result, you can see these really cold cloud tops pushing up, which is where our cirrus clouds, or the anvils of the thunderstorms, have formed. There was a brief period of reduction in thunderstorm activity over the last 2 to 3 hour period, which is as a result of the onset of daytime temperatures. But certainly within the last sort of hour period, we can see that there has been a re-establishment of ongoing thunderstorms occurring, particularly in this southern portion of the grey area, which is just to the very end of it here. We can see that there is some pinks, or very dark pinks, pushing up, which is an indication that there's some very deep thunderstorms occurring here. We do actually expect that this will actually push outward, and we will see a rapid surge of thunderstorms occurring. Now, this has begun to occur due to the reduction in vertical wind shear that this system has been battling over the last couple of days. The wind shear was not particularly aggressive, although it was a moderate intensity field of wind shear, which was around 15 to 20 knots, which has allowed it to continue developing, but very slightly, and definitely not to undergo rapid intensification. But this has now, or it is currently, subsiding and decreasing in strength, and as a result we can expect that these thunderstorms and structure of the system will continue to both deepen and organize around the central circulation. We can see here in these last few images that the circulation is a lot more apparent, at least in the low level circulation center. We can see it rotating here around the clockwise portion of the system. It is becoming easier to determine where that is, and it's very much in the central portion of this image. Now, as this continues to develop, there is a chance that it may be able to clear out an eye, especially as it intensifies or approaches the higher end category 2 to category 3 strength. Right now it is a category 1, and that was as a result of increased wind shear that it battled yesterday, so it did get downgraded, but we do expect that this will continue to intensify and regain the category 2 status. In fact, there is a small potential that it also could reach category 3 status before reaching the Darwin area, but of course this will be conditional to a wide array of factors, whether it can actually deepen itself enough to be able to achieve that higher end status before passing to the west of Darwin. And we also do have a reduction in the amount of dry air entrainment that was occurring from northerly convergent winds, mainly on the eastern portion of the system. But as this has also subsided, a more moist environment now can exist, which will help to deepen those thunderstorms and actually help to support intensification of this system over the next 24-hour forecast period. If we switch to the visible imagery, we can see here in these first few frames just how deep the convection that was ongoing this morning was. We can see those cirrus anvils exploding upwards, reaching those really high heights of around 55 to 60,000 feet. So as we spoke about before, we can see that the convection did definitely subside for around 1 to 3 hours, or at least it was less intense than what we saw earlier this morning. But we can see that it is re-establishing itself, like we said before, in that southern portion of the deepest convection. And this is, again, as a result of that lack of dry air entrainment and decreasing vertical wind shear. It does appear that the system center is located located just to the northeast of Darwin, but it will continue that south to southwesterly track for the next 24 hours, which will push it pretty close to the Darwin metro. And certainly we can see a large amount of outflow also occurring with this system, which is also a good indication that it should intensify. We can see an outflow channel here to the southwest, especially as those cirrus anvils are really exploding upward this morning, and we can see that outflow definitely pushing out from the system, which will help to ventilate it and intensify it. If we switch to the Bureau of Meteorology's official forecast track map, the latest track map, we can see here that there has been substantial change in the track map over the last couple of hours, and certainly since the overnight period. And this is as a result of the erratic nature of the system. There's a number of competing steering influences that this system was under, and there is now a differing steering influence as a subtropical ridge develops and slightly shifts southward, which is developing this south to southwesterly recurve toward Darwin. We can see here that the system is located as a Category 1 tropical cyclone at this point in time, just to the north of Minjalang and the Croker Island region. But by around the next 12-hour period, we do expect that this system will be positioned just to the west of Minjalang as a Category 2 system as it begins to track through the Van Diemen Gulf and essentially directly over Cape Don. Now, this system will continue to track through the Van Diemen Gulf and will be a sustained Category 2 system with a destructive wind field around itself by around the next 24-hour period from now. And it will be located just to the northeast of Darwin at that point in time. And certainly Darwin will be within the range of gale force winds around this system. And then as the system continues to track to the southwest, there is a potential that Darwin could become inside of that destructive wind field within the next few hours on top of that, which would be around sort of evening hours on Saturday. Now we can see that there is a substantial difference in the width of the cone of uncertainty indicated in the grey, and this is as a result of poor model agreements on where this system will exactly track. Now it could certainly shift to the north or south of these regions, and as a result the impacts to these regions would differ. A shift to the north would obviously result in greater impacts to the Tiwi Islands. Likewise, a shift to the south would result in greater impacts to the Darwin region. And we can also see beyond this point, we spoke about yesterday in some of the guidance that the system was indicated to enter the Western Timor Sea, or at least the western top end where warm waters are definitely located around 30 to 31 degrees quite abundantly. And this system will likely enter this region and intensify as it tracks over northern Joseph Bonaparte Gulf. In fact, it's indicated here to reach a Category 3 intensity, which would be a severe tropical cyclone or reaching that hurricane force intensity. And as a result, it would likely develop a very destructive wind field around its central circulation. And at that point in time, it would also likely have an eye wall. And this is very much consistent with what we saw on some of the models yesterday, mainly the ECMWF as well as the HAFSA hurricane or tropical cyclone forecast model. But beyond this, there is indication that a landfall scenario could also occur in portions of northern WA, particularly around the Kimberley region, although the uncertainty of exactly where that would occur is quite unclear at this point in time. So it'll certainly be something very important to watch for the next couple of days to see how this progresses and develops. If we look at the latest forecast notes, we can see that the warning zone has now been extended to the Tiwi Islands. It includes Dundee Beach to Warrawee, inland to Batchelor, Darwin, the Coburg Peninsula and Minjalang. This system is a Category 1 tropical cyclone at this point in time. I need to preface that at this point in time, although it is expected to strengthen. Category 1 sustained winds near the center of 85 kilometers per hour with wind gusts to 120 kilometers an hour. It's located 85 kilometers north of Minjalang and 295 kilometers northeast of Darwin. TC Fina, currently a Category 1 tropical cyclone, is moving slowly south to southwest and is expected to strengthen to a Category 2 system while tracking southwest during today. Fina is approaching the Coburg Peninsula and Tiwi Islands and will move over the area tonight before continuing southwest through the Van Diemen Gulf on Saturday. Fina is forecast to further intensify to a severe tropical cyclone during Sunday afternoon in the southern Timor Sea. There continues to remain a chance that it could reach a Category 3 intensity earlier during late Friday or early Saturday as it moves into the Van Diemen Gulf. If we switch to the latest HAFSA model run, which is one of the high-res tropical cyclone models, we can see here it positioned to the northeast of Darwin. And if we run this out through the next 24-hour forecast period, we can see it tracks over the Croker Island region, especially around Minjalang, at which point it would be a Category 2 system. We can see here around the periphery it has wind gusts of around 130 to 140 kilometers an hour, still a relatively totally disorganized system though, but a intensification of what we currently see in the satellite imagery. And then it continues to progress through the Van Diemen Gulf, or at least on this model, scraping the southern border of the Tiwi Islands before passing just to the very north of Darwin. In fact, it's very close to Darwin, but it does indicate here that Darwin would be experiencing 120 kilometer or destructive wind gusts, but the most intense wind field is just located offshore around the system. And in fact, some of these wind gusts are indicated here to be pushing upwards of 145 to 150 kilometers an hour, at which point it would be a stronger system than what it currently is as well. And then as it continues to track west through the Timor Sea, we can see here that rapid intensification that does begin to occur, pushing it into a severe category tropical cyclone, reaching that hurricane force intensity. And certainly on this model, it's very much apparent how strong this system actually gets. It develops wind gusts well over 200 kilometers an hour, especially within the inner Iowa region. Some of these wind gusts reaching 250 kilometers an hour, indicated by the much more symmetrical structure around the system as well. And certainly a very large wind field of 140 to 150 kilometer an hour winds in a large spatial extent around the system as well. At this point in time, this system would likely be the strongest that it has been since its development, where it continues to track through the Timor Sea into the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf, and as a result, a potential landfall scenario could occur for the Kimberley region, particularly around the Kalamburu area. This is certainly something to watch over the next couple of days as the forecast information becomes more clear on what we can expect. But certainly the system is indicated, at least on this model and a number of other models over the last couple of runs, that the most intense development of this system will actually occur in the Timor Sea after passing west of Darwin. So by Sunday into Monday, this system will present a significant threat for a further landfall in Western Australia. And that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. We've covered off on the expected track path of Tropical Cyclone Fina, which unfortunately is still quite murky in the details due to an erratic nature and a lack of defined or dominant steering influence at this point in time. So it has endured a number of shifts, and the intensity has also been quite hard to predict due to the entrainment of dry air as well as the vertical wind shear that it did battle over the last 1 to 2 days. As discussed, we do expect that this will continue to intensify and a number of impacts are likely. So if you are in the mentioned areas, especially on the Bureau of Meteorology's track path, please be sure to pay close attention to this system over the next 24 hours. If you are new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe, as well as turn on notifications for the latest updates on this system as well as other severe weather across the country. We'll be sure to provide you the latest information and updates on this system as well as on the Facebook page, and we will catch you back tomorrow in the latest forecast video.